Hi everyone and welcome to Seeds and Weeds. My name is Brenda, and if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, welcome back. So it's early July here in South Africa, and at the moment I'm busy looking at prepping and just planning the garden for the coming season. So I know it's very early still, but there are quite a few chores that you can do while we still got a bit of a chill in the air. So what I'm busy doing at the moment is just cleaning some of my seed trays so that I can start getting ready to do seed starts. There are a few seed starts that you can start with at the moment, like your hot chili peppers, your very long season crops. If you've got a heating mat, and then obviously a warmer spot where you can actually start those seeds so long, just to get a bit of a jump start on the season, so that when it does warm up, you can get them in the ground earlier. But all I'm doing for today is just washing trays. I'm going to show you here. At the moment you'll see I've already started. These trays here I've reusing them from last season. So these ones I've already washed. So the reason behind washing your seed trays is actually more to do with just making sure that if there was any contamination in the soil that was in there, or in storage, it got something on it that it wasn't supposed to, that you're not going to get that tainting your new seed starts. So I've got those big trays. I've also got a bit of pots in the water already that I'm going to be washing, and small seed trays. These I'm going to throw in the water so long. These small seed trays are actually, I can fit 4 of them on these trays, so I'm just going to give these a wash as well. If you're washing those, you might as well wash the trays and get those clean. These ones I actually use for these nice big trays. I can fit 2 of these on these crate lids. So the crates broke, so I've just taken the lids and I'm actually using them so that they don't mess water everywhere. So I've also got a couple of new seed trays. Now I think it was last year, I had the new seed trays and I actually planted straight into them, and I had quite a few of the seeds were stunted, so they just didn't want to grow. So with chatting to a few other people, they said that make sure that you wash even new seed trays, wash them with soapy water before you plant, so that if there are any contaminants from the plastic or anything like that, that they won't affect the soil that your seedlings are started in. So seedlings are quite sensitive to different things, so you don't want to have anything that's not supposed to be there. So if you do buy new trays, be sure to wash them with soapy water before you plant anything into them. So I'm going to go ahead and wash all of these, and then we'll get on to the next project for prepping for seed starting. So the next section or the next lot of planning that comes in is obviously your seed and what you're going to be planting and when that all gets planted. So last season I ended up planting everything late. Just life happened and everything just ended up getting planted later than expected or took longer than expected, and I didn't get the harvests out of what I did grow, which did grow well. I didn't get the harvests because I was just too late in the season. So this season I want to plan properly so that I can actually get decent harvests out of what I actually plant in my garden. I'm going to be giving advice on more of a beginner garden setup. So someone who's more getting started and just wanting to grow food for themselves, not really a big setup. There are so many different garden setups. I mean, from market gardens to food forests to people wanting to grow more than just for themselves, to just growing enough for yourself and your family to put up, etc. So an important thing is to obviously set your goal of what you want to achieve in your garden, because that is going to determine what you plan for. So if you're just wanting to start a garden to be able to grow some food for yourself, to put stuff up, then you'll obviously keep it a lot more basic and you won't go as big as, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm looking at progressing to making a market garden, but that's going to be, it's a long-term project. It's not something, I'm still starting out. I've done one season in the garden now. This will be my second season, which will obviously, you learn something from every season, and that's why I'm looking to plan better. So just determine your goal before you look at doing this planning of your seed, what you're going to be starting, etc. So because of my lack of planning, I actually came across a video from Jill from Willow Farm in the US, and she made up a spreadsheet that she uses as a quick reference guide as to when to use or what seed she has, what the germination is, how many days to harvest, etc., and when to plant it. So I thought that was a very good idea, because I very seldom, when I'm actually planting out seedlings, I don't take my packets of seed to the garden. I take the trays of seed and I go and I plant out. So I made up a spreadsheet for myself here, and basically I say what the seed is, the variety or supplier. This one is actually, so the main category will be like your artichokes, what artichokes there are, who the supplier is, how many days for germination, the days to harvest, so that you know that you're going to be waiting 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, etc. And then also what month, this last column here is what months of the year they actually get planted in and when we can plant. So we're lucky, obviously. We have a longer growing season, but whenever you plant something, you've always got to keep in mind how many days to harvest, because it doesn't help you go and plant something and then you run out of season and you don't get to harvest the things. So I'll, if someone's more interested in this, I can give you a closer screenshot of the different headings. I did the germination days because for me, I like to, because I've got the bigger seed trays, if I mix up the tray, I want to try and put everything together that's germinated more or less at the same time, so that you plant stuff out of that tray and then the tray is empty to be able to plant other things again, and that you're not sitting with half a tray of seedlings. And then, as I say, the spacing for the seedlings is something that I put on my list, which is important for me. So I'll actually laminate this list and put it in with my gardening stuff. So when I do go and plant out my seedlings, I've got a quick reference guide, because as I say, I'm not going to, I very seldom remember to look at my seed packets. So that's why I put that actually on my list. For me, this spreadsheet of all the varieties, how long it takes to germinate, how long it takes to actually grow, is quite nice to be able to plan and put things together that are sort of have the same sort of growing period, etc., etc. So as I say, so that's one thing that I have already prepped, and I've done it for my vegetable seeds as well as my flower and my herbs. So irrespective of what I want to plant out, I will have this list with me so that I can have a quick reference as to what the spacing is, etc. So the other thing that I want to I will obviously look at now and planning is obviously the starting of the seed. So I also watched the training video from Livingseeds farm. They had a training session on the 1st of July on their farm with regards to obviously starting your garden and prepping now, and obviously seed starting, etc. So I will also list that video because there's quite a lot of good information in the video. So I'm just going to give you a broad overview of what they said and the things that I sort of picked up from them that I want to use to start get my stuff started. So first of all, I've made up these seed sorting trays. You'll see this is a smaller one, which I've got my herbs in. Sorry, the sun is quite big, you can't see so well, but I've got my herbs and my flowers in this one. And then I had a bigger one made for all the vegetable seeds. So this one's got 5 cubbies and 4 across, and this one's got 3 cubbies with 4 across. I first made the small one and I discovered it was way too small for all the seed I had, so I ended up making a bigger one just to be able to get everything nicely sorted so that I know where all my seed is together and it's all organized and easy to find. So with starting seed, they actually break the seed down into sections with regards to starting the seed. So you don't just start everything all at once, because then you're going to end up having stuff that's ready to be planted out of your seed trays, and then the season outside is not quite ready for it. So how they break down the planting or the starting of the seeds is that they start with the long season crops like your chilies, your loofahs, if you're planting cotton, stuff like that, your long season crops. Then you will look at your tomatoes and your milder peppers. Then you look at cucumbers and pumpkins and those things, and then your beans and the things that sprout a lot faster. Sorry, I just moved the camera up because I was starting to be full in the sun and you couldn't actually see what I was doing. So another important thing to look at with regards to when you're buying seed and you're starting out in your garden is that there's so many awesome different seeds out there, but a lot of the time you end up going and it's like, oh, this looks interesting or that looks interesting. And I just want to encourage you to try and stick to the basics of your seeds. Try not to plant something that your family is not going to eat, because you're going to end up not eating it or giving it away or whatever. So, I mean, sometimes you do want to experiment with growing new crops, which is fine. But as I say, if you're starting out wanting to grow stuff for food for your family, then try and stick to crops that you're actually going to eat. You'll see I've got a lot of seed here. I actually have a chili and pepper fetish. Every time I see seed for that, then I want to just buy it. So I've been trying to keep to seed that I actually know I will grow and eat. So just keep that in mind also when you're doing your planning. So a very important fact that you also need to take into account with regards to starting your seeds is obviously a frost date or your last frost date. In gardening, your first and last frost date is quite an important date that you need to start taking note of, because it'll always determine the growing period in your garden. So in South Africa, it's not quite as easy to determine your last frost date. In the US, you can actually punch your postcode into Google and it gives you an estimated last frost date. Now, when you talk about a last frost date, you do get mild frosts, which won't affect your garden too badly, but they're talking about a really big frost, as in a killing frost that despite even if you cover something with frost cloth, that'll actually frost through that cloth and kill whatever you've planted. So your last big frost date, you try and determine that and look in your area for that. So I'm still trying to determine mine, but I'm working on probably about mid-September for where I am situated in the Free State. It does get quite cold here. We get a lot of frost, so I'm working on about the 15th of September. Now, when you start your seed, you're obviously going to work according to that date. So if you know your last frost date is, say, the 15th of September, then for 6 to 8 weeks before that, approximately, you can then start looking at starting your different seeds. So you would start your long season seeds first. So things like your hot chilies, loofahs, cotton if you're growing cotton, okra, stuff like that. So that would be your first thing. So about 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date, you can start things like that. Once you've got those started, because you're going to have to put them on heat mats, you can't just plant them and then expect them to grow. Those, your chilies, and it's more of a tropical plant, so they need warm soil in order to germinate. So you're going to need to get a heat mat. For those who don't know what a heat mat is, it's like I've got one here. So it's got like little wires built into the mat that warms it up to a certain temperature so that the soil is warm enough. So they don't normally have regulators on, but it's worked out so that the number of coils in the mat won't overheat your plants so that they die. So, but it'll keep the soil warm enough that those seeds will be able to germinate. So once you've got your chilies and those things started, then you can start looking at your sweeter peppers. You can look at your tomatoes. Again, you're going to need heat mats to get these to germinate. So just keep that in mind, that you need to have enough heat mats to be able to germinate what you're looking at. Once you've got your tomatoes, etc., planted, then you're going to start looking at your cucumbers and your pumpkins and things like that. And then last on the list, before your direct sowing, would be sort of your beans and those faster sprouting veggies. Basically, looking at transplanting your seedlings would be about 2 to 3 weeks after your last frost date. So don't be too quick to plant your veggies out into your garden beds. Just remember that the soil is a lot colder. Obviously, a lot of these things have been on heat mats, so the soil has been warm. And if you take those seedlings and you plant them straight out into the garden where the soil is cold, they're going to get transplant shock. I mean, they do get a level of transplant shock anyway, but obviously if the soil is very cold, it's going to be a lot worse, and it can end up stunting your veggies, etc. So we do not in South Africa have the problem like in the US where the soil freezes, or for the most part of South Africa. We don't have a problem with soil freezing, so we're very fortunate. And we also have a longer growing season than they do in the US, which is always for us a bonus. The training session from Livingseeds actually touches on that. So the link below, you can just click on that and actually watch that training video. It's, as I say, got a lot of useful tips and information. So just different things to plan for. Obviously, if you don't have compost and things like that yet, now is a very good time to actually go to the suppliers and start ordering your compost, etc. Don't wait until spring when everyone suddenly realizes, oh, they want to make their garden, and then there's a big rush, etc. So now is a good time to do that preparation, get your compost planned, ordered, delivered if necessary, and yeah, as I say, if you can get that on your beds, I put my compost, I mulch my compost on the top of the beds. I don't dig it into the soil. So once you actually water that compost, then those nutrients actually leach down into the soil below, which helps to feed that. So it's not necessary to dig it in, and it's obviously a lot less effort. So, and there's nothing wrong with with doing less work to get the same results. So that's awesome. Something else you need to, which is a good idea to plan for before the season starts. I mean, it's the same as getting sick. If you get sick, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be before a weekend or a public holiday, where if you have to do a call out, it's going to cost you a lot more. So planning for pests and diseases is always a good idea, so that you've got the stuff on hand, so that when you see something's going wrong, you nip it in the bud, and you can basically avoid a much bigger problem. Prevention is always easier than cure, so the quicker you catch something, the better. So my garden, I'm trying not to use chemicals and things like that. I'm trying to use the more natural way of doing it. So I haven't tried the sort of your what do they call it, the natural bugs that they use for like aphids and stuff like that yet. It is something that is on my list to try, because obviously if you've got someone else doing the work for you, or something else doing the work for you, I think that's a bonus, and at the end of the day your garden will be healthier. So I definitely want to look into that going forward. But so 3 products that the Livingseeds recommends that you keep on hand for different pests in the garden, and which don't affect your beneficial bugs. They list Bioneem, Pyrrol, and Nudithan. So those are 3 that should cover most of your pests in the garden. So that's basically your garden first aid kit, if you want to call it that. It's good to have those 3 items in your cupboard for that. Then something else you can also look at planning for is succession planting. So what we mean by succession planting is so that when you plant one thing, then you'll plant something else potentially at the same time, so that one will be ready for harvest and the other one is still busy growing, so that everything is kind of broken up, that you're not trying to harvest everything together, because that can get quite overwhelming. So succession planting is where you'll plant, like say for instance your carrots. You plant your carrots, and then when they start sprouting and they're probably 2 to 3 centimeters high, then you plant the next lot of carrots, so that when you finish harvesting the first lot of carrots, so when they're ready, then you can you'll have carrots all through the season, and that you're not trying to harvest everything at once and then trying to do something with those. So it's just basically a way of spreading out your plants. So there are your different varieties, as I say. That's why on my spreadsheet, I'll show you this now. The spreadsheet I have here is the days to harvest, so that I know, and on a lot of your seed packets, it'll tell you the days to harvest. So you can have a look, see. So some carrots you'll get will harvest in say 60 days, and other carrots will harvest in 90 days. So then you plant them together knowing that those ones should be ready first, and then you're going to harvest the ones from 90. So back to the succession planting is the tips that the Livingseeds guys gave is that you actually, when you're planning for succession planting, especially with tomatoes and beans. Tomatoes, if you plant determinate and indeterminate tomatoes together at the same time, the difference between the two, let me just quickly explain, is that determinate tomatoes get it to a determined size. So it's a fixed size of the bush, and they normally ripen or have a shorter harvest length than your indeterminate varieties. Now, an indeterminate variety is one that sort of, it'll keep growing as much as you give it space. So it's normally the ones that they tie up. You'll have seen in my garden that I actually put the poles across with the strings that I tied mine up. So those are indeterminate tomatoes, which have a longer growing season, but they take longer to be ready. So if you do your determinate tomatoes and indeterminate tomatoes, then you'll be able to get tomatoes early in the season, and then later the indeterminate varieties, when they ripen, then you'll still have tomatoes. The beans is the same, where they plant bush beans, which will be ready first, and then they plant pole beans, which obviously take a bit longer, but then you'll also have produce for a longer period in the garden. So that's something that works for us here in South Africa. Lettuce, a lot of people generally grow lettuce, and lettuce in the summertime has a tendency to bolt. Now, bolting means that it's basically it starts getting hot and it decides it's time to make seed, and it flowers, and then the plant dies, or it's basically finished producing. So lettuce likes your cooler weather, but there are varieties that handle heat better. So if you want to plant lettuce in the summertime, look for a variety that is more heat resistant to plant, so that you don't end up planting something that just bolts and goes straight to flower. Coriander is something else that is also prefers cooler weather. There are quite a few veggies that prefer the cooler weather, so just do a bit of research into varieties and what the heat resistance is for them. Okay, so I've given you quite a lot of information that you need to take into consideration with your planning, and please don't feel stressed about it. Just if you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments, or you're welcome to email me. I'll leave my email down below as well. And it's a learning process every season. Even when you do know what you're doing, there are things that go wrong. Everything is a learning curve, so don't stress about it. Take it one step at a time. Start off deciding what you want to plant, then you look at the different varieties, and if you only get your seeds started closer to September, that's also okay. So we're lucky, we've got a long growing season in South Africa, so you'll still be able to get your veggies planted and then get a good harvest out of them, even if you plant everything in September. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to make a list of what I want to plant. Then I'm going to go through my spreadsheet and have a look, obviously, at how long it takes to germinate, and then I'll make my list of when I'm going to be planting or starting seeds. So obviously I've got, like I said, I've got a chili fetish. I've got 2 sections in this tray just for chilies and sweet peppers. So I'm going to have a look at that first, and obviously start those first. I've only got 2 heat mats, so I'll be limited as to how many trays I can plant at once, but I'll look at getting that done first, and then, as I say, have a look at the other varieties and see what I'm going to be planting there. So time for me to put pen on paper and start my planning. So I hope that helps you with your planning, and that, like me, you're going to be able to plan a bit better this season. And as I say, if you've got any comments or questions, or if you've got tips, I mean, I'm always open to tips. There's always great things to learn from people. Please leave a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.